do think that you can hear me now well. Good evening, everyone. And we're about to start the discussion. My name is Elmira Minkina, and I curate the project which has now opened in the open storage of the Garage Museum of Contemporary Art. And it is aligned with 80th anniversary of Joseph Joseph Backstein, who was an important curator, an operator, and connector who initiated a lot of movement in contemporary art. And this project is here to remind us this movement is ongoing. And tonight, joining me for the discussion are Sasha Obukhova, who curates archive of the Garage Museum of Contemporary Art, and she partook in many of the actions which look incredibly cinematographic as of today. And I was working with the museum collection and video archive, and I utilized it as the main point of departure for the project which we're unveiling. And these include videos which Joseph did by himself, which he filmed, and we added videos where he shows up as a curator, as the person talking to another person and being at the vernissage, and it became a point of departure for the project called Bachstein Function. And I'm also joined by Maksim Ilyukhin, who is part of the institute named after Joseph Backstein. And Maksim was a part of this legendary exhibition, The Last Generation, from 1999. And tonight we are going to remember Iosif Markovich. And thankfully, both Maxim and Sasha were acquaintances of Iosif Markovich. And here I have to confess that I do not have any personal connection to him, and we never met. And perhaps this very distance has allowed me to engage with this project and utilize my imagination for it. And the way I describe this project is that it is connected not just to the personal memory of him, but to the collective memory. And here I would like to ask you, Sasha and Maxime, whether you may be able to share your memories, reminiscences, because not all the things are included in the timeline of Bachstein function. Oh, well, well, truth be told, it's going to be very complicated because Iosif and I, we met back in 1990. And there was this one of the literary evenings. And at the time, he was very interested in picking out staff for amazing great deeds expected ahead. And he was talking to many young future professionals, and he was interested in recruiting people for new work. And during next 4 years, I was to an extent his right hand, his counselor of sorts. So it is hard for me to delineate or highlight one particular narrative thread. Um, and in 1996, when I left Institute of Contemporary Art and started doing my own projects, we kept on interacting. Every now and then he called me and we kept the conversation going, and we didn't grow distant. So what I miss is the chance to see this marvelously beautiful person at some sort of opening, and he would hold the button of my blouse and explain his new project in a great detail. Then he will run off and call Hans Ulrich Obrist or somebody from the new stars of the curatorial work. And he was always having those whirlwinds around him. And I don't think that we do not have a person of such scale and grandeur. Well, I think we have some, but they're incredibly rare. And I would like to say that Bachstein function is this whirlwind of communication. Well, I would say that I met Joseph Markovich when I was enrolling. I was a part of the first course which took part in the Institute of the Problems of Contemporary Art. And I didn't have very strong particular memories about this first meeting of ours, but when we started, when we were engaged in learning, we once went to Istra, and we decided to go to the monastery of New Jerusalem. And at a certain moment of time, well, frankly, I forgot how this idea emerged, but my mother is from Istra, and I decided to offer the group of ours to go to my mother's house. And Yosif was like, yeah, let's go there. And this is the end of 90s, and our home was slightly decrepit, and all of a sudden there's this buzzing big company showing up, and we brought life into this place, and it was an important and very vivid point for me because it evolved naturally, and it was a very, very friendly interaction with the space. Thank you. I think that when I was selecting video fragments to make it a part of the show, I kept on thinking about him being a very communicative person who is able to find common ground with representatives of different walks of life, different professions. And it was very interesting to listen to foreign languages because he was able to upscale Russian contemporary art scene of the late 80s on the international level. And when I saw him meeting Namjoon Paik and having a handshake, I realized that they spoke as equal with an equal, and it was a revelation to me. And this project, which is behind our backs right now, is video driven because project shows a person who's recording one's own work in life, one's own engagement with life, and one who not only witnessed oneself but showed up on different witness in the works of other witnesses. And here, Sasha, I would like to ask you about your ways of working with archiving tapes, videotapes, and digital video. What's your relationship to this problem? Well, I wouldn't say that we are related to this problem. We are creating this very problem. And we have Yulia Ovchinnikova here. And Yulia and I, because of Yelena Yelagina, a famous artist who passed away recently, sadly. So Yulia and I, we kept on doing the archival work, and it was our burden. And there was a moment when director of Garage Museum offered us a place to work in, technologies to engage with, and all sorts of institutional preferences which would help it to grow into the archive. And video recorded by Yulia for 28 years of the scene is being kept in our archive. And a lot of fragments which are used within the project Bachstein function are filmed by Yulia. And this problem of recording and preserving video is a multifaceted one, because digitizing and preserving, storing, cataloging items, digital items, is a vast problem field, and I'm not going to engage with it fully here. But I will share an anecdote about our scientific department. So we have a media archive, and there are archivists who are preserving videos. And in 2011, when we moved archive into Garage Museum, we thought, well, why should we take pictures at the openings? Because everyone is taking pictures on the openings and publishing it on their social networks. And we decided to stop filming and recording openings. And one of our staff members, Yelena, said that I watched hundreds of hours of videos connected to art scene of 90s and noughties. I realized that I now know much more about 90s and noughties rather than people who were working in 2010s, because there is just not enough material about our period of life. And so we decided to film, tape, and record openings and meetings at the current art scene. And with this, I would like to stress that archive is not about preserving, it's about ensuring the continuity of artistic life. Yeah, and that's quite wondrous that the recordings which are preserved in the Garage Museum archive help us to understand that not all the events can be filmed in a traditionally conventional way, because there's a lot of amateur taping going on, but a very particular vision may derive meaning from different types of recordings. And my guess is that, well, not even my guess, my observation is that you catalog the archive in a very comfortable way. And the very possibility to collect 200 video fragments for the Backstein function, the very possibility to collect this amount of videos was only possible because of the catalogs. And I was able to uncover that he was taking part in films, he was performing in films, and this availability was made purely by a great design of catalog, which allowed me just to type the name and surname, Joseph Backstein, and just get it all together. Yes, and I would like to say that this is perhaps the best compliment and the best remark we can actually receive, because we developed this database in such a way so that all the media fragments would be available to any sort of user. So it brings a great joy to me. And I would pass on your remark to my colleagues. Well, I personally invited all the archive workers. Yana attended the show. Yeah. And coming back to, so we have weird videos in our archive. Well, it was quite a mystery that Soviet people were able to have personal video cameras. Everyone perceived it as a miracle and started filming everything. And the first time when Iosif went to Honolulu, oh, Yana joining us, amazing. She's the main character here. So when Iosif went to Honolulu, he kept on filming everything. The way he's being met in the airport, there are palms, and so his camera became a sort of eye recording everything. I don't think that it works the same way today with the digital media. Yeah, and here I would like to remark that Nikolai Politkov wrote that Iosif kept on filming in a very haphazard, unsystematized way. But I think it has to do something with the rhythm in which he existed and operated. So Maxim, I would like to turn to you as an artist, as a person who is responsible for making exhibitions, a person working with video to archive one's own performances. So I would like to say, when you do the video archiving of your performances, are you acting in the sort of museum logic, or do you pursue other goals? Yeah, so coming to my experience, when so we had this preliminary conversation dedicated to the exhibition and the focus on the person who's responsible for making contemporary art, but the person who films oneself in a very homely context as well. So it resonated with me because the first time I went to New York in 2003, I had a handheld camera and I kept on filming a lot of things because we walked around museums, and I was filming on bars, and I made a video work out of those pieces, and I haven't watched it for a long time. But when COVID hit, I decided to digitize those tapes, and when I started rewatching, I realized that people were quite uncomfortable with me filming because they are explicitly unhappy with me filming people in the bar. And I realized that this is something I didn't pay attention to because I was quite charmed with the very process of filming, and I had a new lens which I was happy to test. And there was one particular moment when I felt that not everyone may be comfortable with being filmed without consent. And I found a moment where I found a tape, a home video, when I was just with my friends in India, and I kept on filming things we encountered, Red Fortress, tigers, and but my friends are not on the tape, and I felt that they were uncomfortable with it because my friends were not comfortable with it. But 15 years later, when we rewatched it with my friends, I was like, I would be so happy to see them in the frame. And friends said, yeah, why are we not in the picture? And I said, well, you were uncomfortable with me being filmed, with you being filmed. So later, I started to address camera as a player, as a participant, one of the participants of the actions you engage in. And I keep on thinking about the ways to, as I now work a lot with music, I'm thinking of ways of installing camera in such a way that it also plays part in the conversation.
So the camera becomes a kind of a technical tool that gets you a certain effect. For me, it's all about relating to it. If it's just an austere kind of observer, then I also feel uncomfortable, like the people I filmed at a cafe. Yeah, I remember when we discussed it, I quoted an example. When we shoot, if we take films made in the 80s or in the 90s, people always ask Joseph, are you filming it with sound or without the sound? To our contemporaries, this may sound like a rare question, but back then it was not clear. A camera was seen as a threat, right? Anything that was captured by the camera was documented forever. I don't think that was the case personally. As I was talking to Maxim about shooting strangers in a cafe, it's a different situation. All the people that Joseph shot on camera were his friends, Monastyrsky, Ilya Kobakov, Vika Mochalova. They were all like a family. So that was the opposite. That question may be, have you not forgotten to enable the sound? I want my voice to be in that recording. It's not about strangers, right? It was his closest friends. They were interested in documenting these precious moments together. We can see it in all the recordings, for example, the collective actions. They wanted to document every single detail of their time spent together, so I don't think it was seen as a threat. The camera was seen as a threat. Leonid Aluchkin, whom I love, who was a collectionist and worked with archives in the 60s and in the 70s, which was a difficult time in Moscow, was rumored to be a secret agent of KGB. It is even documented. Later on, I realized why it was the case. Leonid Dalochkin was rumored to be a security agent because he was walking around with the paper, constantly taking notes, but it was just his diary. He wasn't taking notes as a spy. If Talochkin had a camera, he would have been filming everybody. Cameras just weren't available back then. But he loved documenting real life, everything about people, how people walk, how people talk, what kind of voice they have, what kind of art they do. For him, it was about his deepest love towards people. So it was a sign of love and care for these people, trying to preserve them in one's memory. At a certain point, as I was looking for the way to structure the narrative in the project, after I had watched, I think, around half of all of these materials, of all of these recordings, I thought abandoning these narratives of documentaries, altogether. I wanted to create something akin to the Friends series. Just people that spend together year after year. Yeah, it resonates with me too. My husband sometimes is critical about what I do with archives. When in 2015 we made the exhibition Insider and later published an album of Georgy Kizilvalter's works, he told me it's just another family album. And it's true, it is a family album in a way. These are chronicles. And what we see in Backstein Function actually performs the same task. It is about remembering the way we once were, I think. And it's great that we don't have labels for every single monitor. Even at the stage of the idea conception, when we were discussing the exhibition, some voiced their concern that this could turn Joseph Backstein into a kind of a bronze monument, like he was the curator of his time. Thanks God, it didn't come out. It never came out this way. It's just the chronicles of the people. Our visitors, many of them are 20 years old, and they don't know who these people are. What they see is just the canvas, different people intertwined together. I think these video recordings do have this function. I mean, these videos could introduce younger people to this community. I mean, these videos are very catchy and they're great to watch, even if you know nothing about this community. It is true, we didn't want to make a show, an exhibition, which would serve as a kind of a QR code to different pages of our web archive. I wanted to create chronicles without academic labels. We wanted the editing, the montage to be that of a fiction film too, rather than a documentary. We are really grateful to all copyright owners that they let us to use all the materials in such a free way. I would call this approach anonymous. So we use these truly as anonymous chronicles. We put them together into a kind of a kaleidoscope, a kind of a carpet of the time. I think what also matters is that we preserve the original sound for the majority of the videos. And the camera people, for example, Makarevich, sometimes make comments like, this is where we are. Sometimes they mention the year or the day when it was shot. Igor was great, right? Unlike Joseph Backstein. Backstein also wrote the specific dates, wrote them down, so we can date almost every video with the notes he took. And I think this kind of documentation actually set us free. We didn't need as many texts. The video that we exhibit, like in the Paradise from Nikita Alexeyev's apartment, and we were allowed to use only the fragments where Joseph Backstein was present. So it was important not to show, for example, other figures of the time, Ilya Kabakov, that was leafing through the feedback book through the comments of the visitors. So it was important to feature only Joseph Backstein, to have him as the focus of the exhibition. We have also been discussing that we might also publish a paper catalog of everything that we used in the exhibition, because the exhibitions come and go, so there needs something that will remain after. But here we face legal issues, right? The issues of copyright. Lots of copyright owners, we have to sign agreements with them. I mean, if you look at the documentation, Backstein Function is a film, right? So we could actually one day turn it into one, turn it into a full feature. Maxim has just said that camera for him is another partner that can be played with, a way to somehow enrich documentation with a certain effect, if I got you right. To me, different formats of how we can show videos was also resonated with what Joseph Backstein himself said. He said that the documentary features can turn into fiction films if they are represented as ones, for example, as installations, and documentaries might even look better than full feature films made with huge budgets. And as I was watching these recordings, I was charmed with the real life that we can see here. For example, the Twin Towers or the Lenin Museum. Well, it was still open. Because from the first Biennale, for example, there is not a single video that has survived. So it's great that we can see it at least the way it was in 1994. I think it's rich material. I'm not sure it would work as one full feature, but the fragments do work. I think this is what Joseph described. In documentary works, what serves for it to become the fiction is the environment. He commented a lot on video essays, and I think these videos are similar in genre. That's true, but video essays are separate pieces that are exhibited separately. Yeah, I think we do need to make that catalog. We'll try that, like in Vadim Zakharov's book, right? A book with lots of different elements to it. I just wanted to add something to my comment. I want camera to transform into an object, into another object in my performative practices. I want the camera to cease being a participant, but I want it to become just an object that is constantly functioning, constantly working, like a fridge, for example. I think there is something to it now as I'm looking through the documentation that I make. I watch it almost straight away after I shot it, and if I can't use it straight away, then I might never return to it in the future, or I might do it by chance, of course. By chance, I mean a situation like the pandemic, when I had a lot of time at my hands and I could look through my archives. For example, today I shot a few videos. Unless I return to them in the next week and choose the pieces that I can use in our group, then I don't know when I will be able to get back to them. However, sometimes after a few years it happens. What is curious about it is that I keep doing it. I work in these two formats. On the one hand, it's old school style. I record exhibitions, concerts, I archive all those recordings. On the other hand, I make recordings and I use them straight away. I post them in our group, and then I can delete them. But by inertia, purely by inertia, I still store them on my hard drive. I love that you compared the camera to a fridge. A fridge does not have eyes. For example, we have three cameras right in front of us. They are even moving. Yeah, they have eyes. They are following us. They're following our movements. I think it is also a reference to the technical shift and to how the audience changed. The last room is about telephones, mobile phones, as a way of returning the audience into our contemporary world. For example, they invited to shoot short videos that will be stored for 24 hours. This returns us to how you use the material you shoot straight away. Or we are used now to watching short videos, scrolling them on different social media. So I think what has changed is both the one that shoots videos and the one that watches videos. So the polemics that you have described, that on the one hand, it's a kind of a constant, like putting more and more objects into a storage space and forgetting them there versus using the material straight away. I think there is also a transitional space in between. Agreed. And as for the eyes, I want to build on that, if that's okay. Since I work with documentation, I have noticed that there are moments that cannot be shot on camera, or the moments that have not been shot, and they become very important to me too, although it is an issue because I studied at the Institute of the Problems of Contemporary Art, of the Issues of Contemporary Art. So back then, it was just the Institute of Contemporary Art. It did not have the word problems in the title. I entered in 1998. Yeah, there were no problems back then in the title, but I knew there would be problems. I got it even back then. So to me, it works. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, art addresses problems, addresses issues. So when something has not been shot, how to work with it? On the one hand, I experience it. On the other hand, I can record it via my words, the verbal account. And this is the issue that I would like to work on more. I face it very often in my work, and I try to resolve it differently. Or I could just guess, like make this assumption that the camera is working all the time, 24/7, then it will be on camera anyway, but the camera is not completely autonomous, right? It turns on and off, or it can miss some other frames, and normally it misses the most important moments from my memories. It's true, for example, we have the interview with Oleg Kulik, and in the first 10 minutes, he said something like Joseph told him that he wanted to be part of the cinema world, and Oleg answered, "You are in cinema already." Guy Germanica, unfortunately, did not want to give us an interview, so we decided to use this comment by Oleg Kulik that Backstein's dream has already come to life. As for the things that remain forever off camera, we could make an archive of the missing videos, a conceptual practice of sorts. I remember that sometimes in conversations, Joseph used to say that if he had another life, he would like to become an actor. I think he managed to do that. Since Backstein Function is a film, then he is a character in a full feature, or an actor in a full feature. And he uses the term paradise a lot. It's my paradise, like paradise, he says. So it might be his second life, right? Or the afterlife. So he used to say, for example, I thought that the Western Europe is paradise, but now I'm in Berlin and I see that paradise is not here. It's somewhere beyond still. I have to say now, as I remember Joseph, because of this project, the society has gone through a number of technical revolutions, right? Betacam, mini TV, high 8, faxes, pages, lots of devices, internet, the internet, mobile devices, so all these possible transformations. He had a BlackBerry, right? Yeah, he had a BlackBerry, an iPhone too, and faxing was his fetish, I must say. CDs, DVD discs, they died in front of our eyes, right? As for the videos that were never made, we have videos that did not make it into the project. The metaphysical body of the Backstein shot at the exhibition in 1993. Sergei Yepikhin, the curator of the exhibition, came up with the following solution. He wanted to fax Backstein from different numbers with provocative texts, and this is how he kept Joseph in tension for around a week, and then admitted it was him. And Joseph suggested they make an exhibition out of it. It was their second collaboration back at the time, but unfortunately only the catalog survived.
Yeah, that was my t-shirt. And there was this t-shirt you sent me from Masterkova's archive. Yeah, I would be quite happy to have a t-shirt with Backstein, which I can use. So the idea behind the exhibition was that fax was erupting paper, and Yepikhin and Backstein keep on moving their mouths without sound, and there's the soundless communication. And fax was being sent by Alexander Kamensky out of Pushkin Museum of Fine Arts. That is, if we talk about videos which were not recorded. Yeah, that's a legend which we can reconstruct. Well, faxes are long gone now. Well, one of the memories which I have connected to Joseph, it was our trip to Sweden as we traveled for a workshop in Anand School in Göteborg. So I went to the workshop, and there was a chance to work with a camera with Betacom. And it was the first work which I made using Betacom because I didn't work with this technique before. And Joseph and I, we just went to a cafe in the evening and we kept on talking to one another. And I didn't feel that like we're in paradise, but I felt that we're in a very special place. And for instance, David Bowie may be our neighbor in a cafe. And Joseph was just talking about life and just acknowledging the presence of this different life. The transmission of an experience was quite important. And I cannot highlight a very particular topic, but there was this video in a work where he said that he was friends with Alec Melamed in school, and Alec explained which color blots are the most good one, the best ones. Yeah, there's this video from IS plus F, and I was unable to understand what is the exhibition they're referring to, and then I realized that this is a show from 1998, and just seeing this original authentic material was fascinating. And there were those original catalogs with slide folders. Well, that's curator's fate. You're being constantly ambushed by artists who want to have a print, to leave an imprint on your life. The very same thing happens with Victor Misiana. I had this thought. Sorry. Yeah, I'm just keep on coming back to the idea of digital and video because I feel myself being Joseph's hard drive, unsorted, chaotic distribution of media files, and this is how I feel. But I want to come back to slides, and perhaps if I would be able to focus on it, maybe I would. So yeah, coming back to an archive. So the way Joseph was filming the very construction of exhibitions he worked on, he was constantly backed by people who were providing professional filming, but there was always this another additional angle, and he was always a part of a frame, part of the picture. And Maksim, when you were talking about this transfer of experience, I was interested whether Joseph talked about his video practices. And I remember when we had a meeting with Vladimir Dubasarsky said that in 1991, Backstein went to their studio and I intervened and I said, well, Vladimir, Joseph filmed it. And Dubasarsky says, no, he didn't even have a camera. And I was quite fascinated to intervene because that was the final stage of us editing the project. And I have to say that Vladimir is wrong here because Joseph used to have two cameras with him almost all the time. Yeah, he bought one by mistake, because it filmed in a format which is not usable in Russian context. I think it was PAL or SECOM. Yeah, well, something you can't watch in Russia, it's like a paradise, if we're quoting Kulik again. This imaginary West we engage with. Let me come back to the very notion which sprung this project into life, and the 80th anniversary, 80th birthday of Joseph, as it gives us a chance to remember project from 1985, which was filmed, and the last project, which was filmed in late 20s, in early 20s. It's an epoch. It was a period of technological changes, the changes in our perception and the way we're filming and recording things on video. And do you think whether Joseph would be able to engage with current level of technology, as Ricklin used to say, that we cannot exclude Backstein function from each and every one of us? Well, I think that he would be the first one to engage with Reels, and he would do TikTok. And even if he wouldn't be able to do it, there will be younglings who would have helped him with that. And I think he'll be on top of the game. He would have been on top of the game. Yeah, I mean, the very construction. Yeah, sorry, but definitely he would be using Telegram. He wouldn't be using WhatsApp. He would be on top of the game. Yeah, and as I was preparing for this session, I reread some of his texts, and I think it's quite obvious from his texts that he's very lively. He was very lively, and his mind is pulsating, and he moves like Mercury, but he keeps on having the threads. But the jumps he's making, the leaps he's making within the text are very engaging. So he develops an argument, but then he says, well, I'm going to send an email, but I do not know where this email is going to be sent and what kind of answer I will receive. And you get his idea that he is writing, thinking about the medium he works with. As we're preparing now collection of essays, as we're now preparing collection of his essays, I now have this task before me that I have to define the point of view. But I realized that he never worked just for the sake of the text. His texts were very actionable. And at this point, I would like to invite members of our audience to engage in the conversation. So if you have questions and if you have any sort of remarks, please engage with us. Good evening. Thank you very much for this discussion. I don't want to pose a question, but I would like to pose a commentary. Sasha, you spoke about the video documentation, that it's not a very developed practice at the moment. And it reminded me of, like, every time I'm unable to recall something, I open my photo archive, and through the usage of those archives, I'm able to recall events that happened in my life. So when my memory is unable to engage with an event, photo allows me to re-engage with it. And Backstein served as this archivist And he, to an extent, in his archivist persona, can be compared to Andrei Monastyrsky as a person who is documenting one's own creative practice. But again, it's not a question, it's a commentary. So, and I would like to refer to Maksim's commentary that we need an archive which can represent the unrepresented videos. And I think it is a great idea. Yeah. I can comment upon your comment because when I need to recall a particular date, I use my iPhone, but that's mental scaffolding because I vaguely recall that it was July something. But in this context, the function is different because function was not singularly locked in Backstein's figure because there were others documenting the history. It's not just about remembering, it is about making an actionable email which pushes one to recall what one did 40 years ago. And I do not really know. Nobody knows what would one receive in 40 years from you, Makar. I would like to add that an important task for archivist, one I faced, that archives are things in itself. Because I was working with archives of Revizorov and Bazuryuk, and these are things in itself. And it's very important to create context. Because Zabarjuk had books in his archive which helped to contextualize things. Well, you know, there are many types of things in itself. For instance, writings on birch is an archival item which has to be contextualized, and archivists are able to work with the context of Sandy and Alex, the one you're referring to, and the way you attribute, that is a mundane task performed by a historian. Yeah, I would like to say that I have this experience with an archive made by Yulia, and Yulia, thank you so much for making it, because I once made an exhibition dedicated to Prigev's legacy, and there was a lecture which I delivered in Institute of Problems of Contemporary Art, and this lecture was about the issues of memory, and actually there is the film of this lecture is in our archive because Backstein is there and he appears there for like 2 minutes or so. And yeah, thank you for saying that. But for me, that's like a time hopping, a time travel, which allows me to re-engage with those items from the past. And it makes me feel something which was not registered by me before. Yeah, here I would also love to add that early on, when there were our first attempts to develop some sort of narrative for the project, because there were frames from the flight to US, and there was this scene where Brodsky is falling asleep on a plane, and I felt that this some sort of it rhymes well with the Soviet movie Father is Very Busy, and there's an exact poetic scene which I thought of rhyming with, and thankfully editing allows to juxtapose and overimpose narrative offered by Backstein in 2011. One can superimpose onto it imagery from the things he's referring to. But also there is this metadata one can work with. You can highlight people who attended the event. Yeah, and here I would also like to note, as I was rereading Backstein's work, those files which I had were undated, and I was trying to guess when were those things published, and I was trying to play this guessing game by paying more attention to personas mentioned in the text, ideas, and it was a mental gymnastics of sorts. And in this sense, video gives you much more many details one can engage with. Yeah, but at the same time, in Bachstein's foundation, there was this video which he didn't film, definitely, because there's a voiceover. Yeah, there were videos filmed by his friend Georgi Perkel, Grigory, and one was filmed by Ilya Kabakov in Venice. Yeah, and one can hear that Bachstein is being addressed by somebody, and it's a very controlled, artsy film. Perhaps other questions or remarks at this point? Elmira, do you hear me? Yeah. Elmira, I have a question for you. In the very beginning, you said that you didn't know Joseph. And to an extent, that's an advantage. You said that it was an advantage which gave you critical distance as you were researching Joseph while preparing for the exhibition. And I would like to ask you, so now, when you have watched everything, when you've read a lot of materials, you've read his book, how would you now answer to the question, what is Bachstein function? I think that now Bachstein's function is bigger than it was being described by conceptualists, because I don't really understand the definition of him as operator, because you have to read Riklin's essays dedicated to Savelovsk railway station, because only in the very end of an essay, Bachstein function appears. And this very definition from this vocabulary of Moscow Conceptual School, the operator of the actuality, it is a very locked definition. I decided to explain it as the sensibility, central openness to all things new. And I thought of it when I was watching a video where there are conceptualists sitting together and in a very homely atmosphere. It is there when Bachstein keeps on moving on to new things, to Kulik. We see his Russian safari, and there's this particular sensibility with Bachstein filming this safari that meant that he was not getting locked in one particular circle, and it is because of that he was addressed by Prigov as Iosif Makarich, and he's being on this friendly trial that he's not working with his friends who endowed him with this authority. But he's not just working with friends, he keeps on looking for new things. And he moves fast, both with friends and on alone. And what kept me going as I was developing this project, the idea that Bachstein was never moving alone. You cannot say that he's this lonely genius. And it is hard to say that he's the sole founder of Moscow Biennial, sole founder of an institute. He was always a part of a scene. He was always engaged with his peers, those who share his language. And I think that this is a part of his function, to find a proper common discourse, whether it is Sergei Borisov or French artists or state functionaries with Shvydkoy, who's opening the second biennial. And you see that it is no longer an insider event, but a very serious, open event, which requires you being some sort of legible partner, serious one. And I remark on this in the text. It is very much about creating environment. Biennial is an environment. Artistic circle is an environment as well. And being a part of the circle, being a part of a scene, is also making a scene. And perhaps my definition of this function is very wide and also flexible, because one can move, one can bend one's own position slightly, make more room for younger artists, and engage with other people more. And I was quite inspired by the idea that first time he went abroad, he was 43, quite a mature person. And it's a very well balanced act on his side, which allows him to revolutionize sociology of fine arts. As one who was not properly trained in contemporary art, he was able to make a position for oneself precisely because of the communicative skills and his skill to adapt. So, very wide description.
May I also intervene? When we were just beginning to work on this project, we argued. In particular, I felt like the curator wants to put Joseph on a pedestal. Then I reminded that besides the dictionary of the Moscow conceptualism, there is also the translation of the list of harmonic serges. And the list of the protagonists there included Ilya Kabakov and others with their nicknames. For example, Alexeyev, Army General. His occupation is having affairs with women. Joseph Backstein was also part of the text. He was also one of the agents. And his nickname was Schneer. I think the meaning was like double agent or something. Yeah, but I think they had a point. He was everywhere at once. He was always somewhere in the circles, in these communities, trying to document whatever he found interesting or curious. He was funny at times, and he used to laugh himself at his own habits and those of others. So he was, yeah, this is just the reverse of the Backstein function. Konstantin Zvezdachotov is proud that it was him who gave this nickname to Backstein. Any other questions? Anton, behind you there is a raised hand. It's not really a question, it's a comment. I have just walked around the exhibition and I just wanted to express my admiration to Mira. I know how hard it is to exhibit video art and chronicles, documentations, how hard it is to be ethical enough about it and to engage the audiences, to take into account the distance between us and the people in the videos or the lack of that distance. And I also wanted to say, as I'm also part of the archive, my colleagues and I, we believe um, in one of the conspiracy theories that some of the agents of the art world are reptiloids actually, and they're here on a mission, they're aliens. And I'm pretty sure that Joseph Backstein is one of those. The fact that today we're opening the exhibition and today is the last day of the tunnel of eclipses, moon eclipse and the sun eclipse. I think it just proves my theory. So when Maxim was talking about New Jerusalem, I did not hear the word new, the adjective new. I just thought that Joseph traveled to Jerusalem to somebody's house just for a tea party. I can imagine that. By the way. And that very day, as Victoria Machilova told us, Mikhail Grobman was born, one of the pillars of the second wave of the Russian avant-garde, also worked extensively with archives, and Yakovlev and Leonard Cohen. Such nice company. Very cinematic. Joseph Backstein in his trench does look like a character out of a film. And how he traveled to Germany. There are memoirs about him traveling in 1988 to Berlin, to the Western Berlin. He traveled with a plastic bag. His task was to travel on metro to a meat shop and to buy salami. And he managed that. He did that. Vika Machilova, I'm so happy you came today. You joined us today. A very old friend of Joseph Backstein. And I would really like to pass the mic over to Vika. Would you like to join us here? We have cameras working. They have eyes. All they see is here on the stage. Or however you actually feel more comfortable. Where are the cameras? Right over there. Okay, got it. First of all, thank you very much for the exhibition for tonight. I'm so emotional. I love Joseph a lot. I never called him by his name and patronymic. I never addressed him in this formal fashion. By the way, you mentioned the concept of paradise during the panel, and I remember that he once told me, you know that paradise is no metaphor. So he lived with this feeling that paradise does exist somewhere. And it's truly weird that he, with his engineering background, he became a leading figure on the art scene. There is a definition of a genius. A genius is somebody who comes from the margins and finds himself in the center. I think this is what Backstein did. Actually, once I called him and said, you're an engineer, right? How do you sort it out? And here is what he answered. Well, in electronics, like in life, like in a human relationship, there may be only two kinds of failures: the absence of the contact where it needs to be, or the presence of a contact where it is not supposed to be. An amazing answer, right? I also remember another episode when Boris Groys, I don't think I need to explain who that is in this audience, in front of this audience, when he left the country, when he migrated. I'm sure you know that back then everybody left forever. It was a challenging process, and people left some kind of tasks to those who stayed. Joseph and I were asked to buy suitcases for immigrants. It was a concept of the time. The suitcases had to be of a certain size, they had to be cheap, right? People had lots of things they needed to take with themselves, lots of suitcases, all the same size. I was driving and he joined me, Joseph joined me because he was a man, so he was supposed to carry weight. So we were driving around Moscow looking for these kinds of suitcases. We found them, not in one shop, but in a number of shops. We bought the number we needed. We loaded the car completely, and we set off to Boris Groys. And there was surveillance after Groys. We came and saw that in front of the entrance there is a black Volga or another kind of KGB car, and there were people sitting in it. I was petrified with terror, truly. I said, well, this is the surveillance. These are the security guys, so we decided not to leave the car. So I said, what are we going to do, Joseph? I was trembling, and he told me with a metallic voice, we are going to fight back. I still remember it, although it happened like 100 years ago. He was an amazing person, a huge loss for all of us, of course. You know, I have probably entered the age when friends turn into books on my shelf, and Joseph turned into one too. Thank you very much. Any questions? Ah, okay. No, sorry for asking such a pragmatic question. Of course, in the room there are people that have worked with Backstein's archive, but there are a lot of people that learn from him from the book. I was born quite late, so there are objective reasons for me not to know him personally, not to have met him. You said that from the vocabulary of of Moscow conceptualism, Backstein function is quite obscure, right? Its definition. So I must say that in the exhibition, you're using parallel editing, where you show videos from different epochs, from different times all together. And it was quite hard for me to sort it out, to understand the context. Although I'm part of the community, but I can imagine a person completely out of the context that comes to the exhibition with no labels, no explications, with no explanations. Of the editing, while you simultaneously show things that were asynchronic at the time. Unfortunately, the decisions were not articulated nowhere because there are no texts that accompany the exhibition. And I understand that there are different positions. I know that to some, showing these fragments is important. It resonates with those who knew Backstein, right? But there are also people who don't know anything about the context. So I was just curious how you see the perfect recipient of the exhibition. Isn't it quite a narrow kind of audience? Looks like it's an eye of the needle that the audience member has to go through. And what reception do you expect from other audience members? Bricklin's quotes, for example, were quoted like they're part of 100% academic text, although the term Backstein function, it was just a joke, right? In all of the titles, they were jokes, but they are presented to be academic. We understand this context, of course, because like we're here in this room. I mean, I do not vote for complete transparency, but even to me, this exhibition was obscure. I've just read text by Joseph Backstein where he says, "You come to the exhibition and you see it's weird, and it's great, right?" So here we follow him in his footsteps. I will quote a different author from the same community. Andrei Monastyrsky, in what he said about the highest aesthetic category that seemed to be cut in stone back then. He said, if I see a work which is 100% clear to me, the author failed. If I see the work which I do not understand, it is a success. He called it positive lack of understanding. Wait a second. Before you argue, so you said about this one room, right? With fabric and with this kaleidoscopic pieces from different decades, from different periods. Yeah, it was the same for me about the other rooms. What Monastersky said was about art objects. Here, we have to be clear about the genre of the exhibition. We're talking about this exhibition. We have to understand the boundaries, the genre boundaries of this exhibition. Is it an art show? Is it a kind of an art twist of the documentary materials that are shown here as ready-made, and we build a conceptual framework around it? What is the genre of the exhibition? How can we evaluate it, assess it? Because Monastyrsky was talking about artworks. As I see it, Backstein function is an art statement too. Boris Groys used to say that an artist is the curator of bad art. Any successful curatorial project, in a certain extent, is a meta artwork. For example, I dislike exhibitions where I understand everything. Well, at least something has to be understandable. Well, I think it's a matter of timing. If you spend more than 15 minutes to walk around the exhibition, We studied the timing for every room for the audience not to feel bored. So I guess you need around 20 minutes in every room. If you do so, maybe it will become clearer because we stay true to the historical data. The direct speech of the characters is a direct comment on what is happening. There are references there to the time in which the video is shot. There are comments on other exhibitions and art shows from the 80s and the 90s. As for the genre, I would just say that the genre is it's an exhibition not for 15 minutes. You think that there is such a genre exhibition that should take longer than 15 minutes? Wait a second, sir. If you state that if this exhibition is an artwork, then myself, as a criticist, I have the right. Yes, of course, it's your complete. So if I treat it as an artwork, should. Beautiful. The main thing is that it's not TikTok, right? It would be unjust to assess the exhibition in a different genre. We always give the word to those that define the genre of their statement or what they do. We cannot, for example, judge the exhibition along the rules of a different genre, look for something there that was not supposed to be there. You know, this statement reminds me about a comment about the black square. One might think that he was fooled by the black square, to put it gently. Thank you all very much for coming. The project will be on until the 31st of January next year. On the 16th of October, we're going to host the next event in the public program together with Ms. Chinnikova, who helped us in designing this exhibition. To me, you're my partners. You helped me to work with the archive with Kirill Glushenko. We will talk to Kirill Glushenko and Andrei Kochelanov, who is a kind of a double agent in our show. On the one hand, he is a person who is responsible for media archive, and he's an artist too. Media archive, I mean, in Garage. He also teaches at the Moscow Film School. We will discuss the specific issues of video making there. Today is Joseph Backstein's anniversary. He could have turned 80 today. We talked about videos as an object of archival work, as a way of watching the world, as a way of seeing the past, the present, and the future, I hope. Thank you all very much.